Monica. I'm an associate therapist at Centered Self. And today I have Una with me. If you want to give a little introduction for us, Una.
Yeah, of course. My name is Una. I work in the digital media marketing specialist area for Centered Self. I've been here for a little over a year, I think, and I'm excited to get on with our chat.
Yeah, this is a series called Spill the Tea in support of Asian Heritage Month for the month of May that we're in currently. So we're going to explore a bunch of different things that is Asian Canadian related, Asian mental health related. So I hope you all enjoy it. Una, have you ever considered doing therapy with your family?
I actually have. It was a really difficult conversation to have. Definitely not just one conversation either. It was kind of picking my moments. I'm like, okay, I think now is a good time, or my parents are in a good mood. We've had a nice hot meal. I think during food is always the time I feel like to bring up any intense conversations, because I'm like, okay, they might be a little happier, might be more open to the idea, but it's really difficult, I found, to bring up with the older generation of parents. Like that baby boomer age is kind of, I feel like they had that mindset of, therapy is bad, or like, if you go to therapy, there's something wrong. And it's not necessarily that case. Like, it means honestly that you're open to help and you're open to talking. And they have a lot of trouble kind of wrapping their minds around that. Have you ever tried as well with your parents?
I have tried bringing up the conversation of therapy. So it's really lovely that you picked the right points, like when you're gathered around food and there's less stress. But yeah, like you, it was really difficult to bring it up. And despite working in this field, I was surprised that my parents were not really that into it. I think they found it strange to talk to a stranger about family problems. And at the same time, they didn't want to talk to other family members that could maybe help mediate the conversation. So for us, we never actually went ahead with therapy, and it still stays that way. I think it did help to open some communication up with our parents and as a family. We never actually did it.
Do they ever ask you about what's your job? So are they ever curious to know, or do you ever kind of use it to, I don't know, introduce it to them? Or
I think, well, back when I went to school and did psychology, wanted to do psychotherapy or counseling, mental health back then wasn't really as well accepted as it is right now. So back then, my parents were like, you're never going to make any money going into mental health. Fast forward 15, 20 years later, they're like, oh, maybe. But I think
doing well.
Yeah. But when it's applied to other people and it doesn't apply to them, it feels like it's a little easier to understand.
Mm-hmm.
But I was surprised for them to be open to me working in the field of mental health, but maybe not taking that kind of support themselves.
Makes sense. I guess they're like, well, as long as my daughter's doing well, their mindset is like, okay, that's great, but not for me.
Yeah. What happened with your family? Were they able to take the time to digest it and accept that?
It took a long time, actually. So, I always thought about it when I was in high school. Obviously, in elementary, I probably didn't have the mindset of we need therapy. I just wanted to get along, and just make them happy. And I think later on in university, I was like, you know what, maybe I think it'll be really good just to even sit in on a few sessions. And in university, I brought it up, I think in a car ride, which is a horrible time to bring it up, because car rides are when my mom goes absolutely focus mode on driving, and she's like, don't talk to me, I'm distracted. So I was like, okay, never mind, not at the phone. I meant not at the car. But I did ask her, I was like, would you ever want to go to therapy? Would you ever consider it? She's like, why? What's wrong with you? Why do I need to go to therapy? Do you think something's wrong with me? And I was like, okay, maybe not right now. But over the course of time, I would talk about, oh, I started working for this company. It's called Centered Self. It's about therapy, online therapy, and it's really interesting because the way they approach mental health is a lot more different, and they like kind of incorporating action towards your mental health. So, like we had Krav Maga classes, and I know you guys used to do pottery, and I thought that was really interesting. You incorporate different things into mental health and not just talking about it, which I think is great. Um, and she was kind of interested in it. She was like, okay, maybe I'll give it a try. And my dad, on the other hand, doesn't speak English very well. So if
Mhm.
I said, if they're going to do therapy, maybe I should find an Asian therapist. I'm Filipino, so I was looking specifically for Filipinos because maybe if my dad had that language barrier, I wanted him to be able to express himself. And if it was in our language, which is Tagalog, then maybe she might be able to help. And we all understand Tagalog. I can speak it. My Tagalog is terrible. My accent is horrible, but I can at least understand what he's saying.
Yeah.
And it was interesting. I know that there's kind of this market out there for looking for Asian therapists because of that same issue. Like they want to be understood, and specific parents and that generation, they want to have someone who looks like them to talk to because they feel more comfortable. And if really that's the case, then it's actually very helpful to find someone like that. I'm not
Yeah.
really sure. I know you're part of the what was it? The Asian Canadian Association?
It's the Asian Mental Health Collective.
Asian Mental Health Collective.
But I think what you're bringing up is really important. And there's how do we find therapists that have similar lived experiences? And also, kind of two paths here of like, what are some things that you would consider when you're working with boomer parents or when you're introducing them to therapy? So I'd like us to maybe explore that a little bit of like, if you're trying to introduce therapy into your family, your parents or boomers, or just encouraging them to be open-minded to therapy, what kinds of things would you bring in? So I heard that you said that activity sometimes helps to bridge that gap, whether it's pottery or Krav Maga classes that we did. So what were some of the considerations that you brought in for your parents?
Well, my mom actually did attend that Krav Maga class and she loved it. I've never seen her active, actually. I think we used to go on walks together, and that was the most activity I would ever get her to do with me. But she was excited. She wanted to try something new. And she'd never been to a class. So the fact that it was, my job and she wanted to support me as well, was kind of her excuse to get out. And she loved it. She's very strong. I did not know my mom had that in her. But she went out, she did it, and it was so great. We got some lunch after and we talked about our experience. And she was very stressed at work. I think my mom comes from that generation where you're very loyal to that first company that you're with, and the
Mhm.
longer you're there, the better. So I know right now the whole thing that's in is if they don't care about you and they don't value their employees, you leave. And that's crazy to my parents. They're like, you don't leave, you stay there. Like you have to keep going. You build yourself up, you stay there, you're loyal to them, and they'll be good to you. And I feel like it's a little bit different now. So my mom's company is a little bit more difficult with her since she is an older side. And now that they're bringing in all these new people, they're putting so much work on her and she's getting so stressed out. So things like that and anxiety, she's new to experiencing and admitting that she has anxiety. And I didn't even know that. So when we went to the class, she started talking to me about it and opening up more. And she was like, I
Yeah.
got to release a lot of that in the class. And it was so great. So I think, yeah, take your parents to a Krav Maga class is where I'm getting from it. It helps a lot. You might bond.
Yeah. Sometimes I think about my parents or the way maybe it's culture related, generation related, where they might find it really hard to talk about feelings and problems. And so when you introduce something in between where there's like a task to do, it might feel easier to engage with something that's quite therapeutic and cathartic, without having to lean into an area of like labeling and putting words to emotion. So I love that that was something that your mom enjoyed and then helped her open up and you guys bond a little bit.
It was really great. I really wish I could do the same thing with my dad. He's a little bit more closed-minded. He's very hesitant about therapy, but he's going, so that's a plus. But I have a lot of other Asian friends, and they kind of tell me the same thing, where their dad is the more closed off one. And there is that stigma between being, man of the house, has to be totally secure, providing for the family, no emotion, no crying, no nothing. And I think that's still there and it's very evident. So growing up with like a headstrong only daughter is kind of difficult for both of us. And we definitely did clash a lot. But I think it's really interesting because I actually got my parents to go to family therapy, and it's amazing. I love it. The first time we did find a therapist who was Filipino, it was actually difficult. And she, I think, was trying to lean more on the parent side and support them because it might help them be more open to therapy or just open up more. And then we decided to go another path and meet with another therapist who's actually not Asian at all, but she helps a lot and she's very direct with all of us. She's kind of picking up on certain emotions. Our last session, she was a way more tough love than she usually is. And it was a lot of, she made us hug. It was the craziest. I have not hugged my dad in so long. I think it's like, that's the thing. It's so toxic masculinity to him. Like he's like, oh, I don't want to give hugs. Like he doesn't do that. But then he mentioned he was in a really mentally tolling accident 2 years ago. And I think he was like, I don't hug my daughter. I don't do anything. Like I don't do anything physical. And maybe that's not his love language, which is fine. But he needs to express it somehow. And I think that really took him to a place where it's like, okay, I think I need to change something. And it's very little, but I see it. And it's something and it's coming out, which I think is really great. But the therapist is really great at pulling that out of him and making him talk and really putting things to action. And it will take time. And I know it is, you can't change them right away. It's what they grew up with. It's what they're used to.
Yeah.
And I don't know if you have that relationship or you've seen that in male Asians.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, for sure. My dad is similar as well. I think he demonstrates his care through acts of service. Like if there's no gas in the car and dad finds out or he hears something about that gas is in the car the next day, right? Or it's all those small actions. And my dad also is a little bit like not so physical touch, but he'll like give me like a pat on the shoulder, So just like you, kind of being more understanding of how they show care. Whether it's my dad loves to do this thing where if he makes something that's really good to eat and we're like, oh my gosh, that was like really good. So back in the day, it was pizza. And the first time he ever made fresh pizza, it was so good. And we're like, Dad, this is really, really good. He started making pizza
all the time,
every lunch for like 4 months straight, to the point where it got to like, whatever's in the fridge would be on the pizza. So there'd be like purple sweet potato, cheese.
It's like an Asian blend.
Meat. Yeah, like fusion. So it got really funny after a while. But, I think dad hears that and he's like, oh, I'll just keep doing and keep giving, me or my sister what they like. So, it has definitely been a different adjustment in learning to see the ways that our parents care for us. Like, I think there's a big, a lot of trending going on of, we're Asian or we have Asian parents. So they show their care through fruit or things like that.
It's always fruit. It's always the fruit.
Yeah. And it's those small acts, I think, that are really sweet. Like I remember my mom when I was a kid. Have you ever eaten a peeled grape?
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh
my mom
my gosh.
peeled grapes for me.
My mom too. That was always my snack. And I think I got so used to fruit that I eventually got so old of it. Like, I'm like, okay, it's always the same fruit. And my friends, that's actually how I met a lot of my friends in elementary school that I'm still friends with now. They'll look at my snack and be like, are those grapes that are peeled? And I'm like, yeah, my mom makes them like, you don't have your grapes like this. And they'll
Yeah.
try them and they're like, this is so good. And they would like kind of steal my food because I was so over it. I've had it every single day for the whole week. And they're like, oh, this is amazing. This is so good. And yeah, it's kind of funny. The peeled grapes are such an Asian staple. Um,
Yeah.
or even like the oranges, like cut up with the seeds poked out. Like, oh,
Yeah.
that's love.
Definitely a lot of attention to those small, small details. I think is such a beautiful thing. Yeah.
We did touch upon it. I actually had a question. So, what exactly is the Asian Mental Health Collective?
Yeah. The Asian Mental Health Collective, um, they're a collective. I think they originally started in the States and they pull together a lot of mental health resources and create a community. One thing that I really like about them is that they actually have a directory for therapists that are Asian. There's a US directory and there's a Canadian directory, and you can go through it and find a therapist that suits what you're looking for. And if you want to get really specific, you can filter from the location to the cultural background to language to in person or online or hybridized. So if you're looking for someone who speaks your language, has a similar background, you can find them on Asian Mental Health Collective. And it just is really curated and is very similar to a very traditionally used psychotherapist search engine or like Yellow Pages. I'm sure everyone's heard of Psychology Today. So this one is definitely tailored towards Asian Canadian or Asian Americans. So it's a really great resource.
That's amazing. It's like, and the fact that you can cater it and look for specific details, it's like Uber Eats for therapists.
Yeah, it is exactly like Uber
It's
Eats for
amazing.
therapists. So I really like that. One of the things I often will like think about or like have clients coming through is like them expressing looking for a therapist that looks like them, has similar experiences as them. Do you feel the same way when you're looking for a therapist for yourself? I know for your family, yes, but for yourself?
Honestly, I have tried to do some research. There's specific things I know with myself or with my family. I mean, I was looking specifically for one that understood that they're very religious. A lot of Asian heritage comes with religion, whether that's Catholicism, Buddhism, and I want to incorporate in there. And I know that if they brought it up, I wanted the therapist to be comfortable with it and not just brush it aside. And that can happen as well. And I understand everyone is religious. So I wanted to make sure that was understood. And as I was talking about that and bringing that up with my therapist, I don't need them to be a priest. I don't need them to fully devote themselves to Buddhism, but I just wanted them to understand. And the more that I talked about it, the more I felt comfortable. I think looking for myself, for a therapist for myself, I think I would also enjoy having someone who understood that I'm religious and that there's some parts of me that still battle with that. And like for a long time, I wasn't even sure, like in Catholicism, you get baptized really early, like literally months before or after you're born. I think I would really like to look for a therapist that understands my religion and that I'm Catholic, and the battle I really went through to realize that even though I was kind of born into it and put through Catholicism and baptized super early, and later on, I decided, I'm comfortable with my religion. I'm proud of it. And I do believe in God. And that's something that I would like my therapist to understand, because if I ever have an issue and I want to bring up, prayer or something like that, I want them to be understanding of that, or even tell me, it's a form of meditation. So it could really help me out in the morning, sitting down with my own thoughts and kind of praying, and it helps a lot. And even our therapist now, with my family therapist, she brings it up to my parents, and they're in a completely different mood, and I can kind of see that it makes them way more comfortable to open up more about themselves, even with that aspect in it.